Hello, and welcome back to AI Ramblings, episode 37, with my dear nephew, Neil McQuanna, and myself, Michael Parekh. Thanks for joining us. We thought we would do something fun again because we're not, Neil, I'm not ready to let go of the holidays. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
And every year around this time of year, we get CES. We did a couple of big write ups on what to expect. We did a show a week ago on what to expect for CES. Well, CES is done and the reviews are exploding. People have talked about the best of CS, worst of CS, lots of stuff to go over. And what does it mean for AI for this year? This is one of the big signal points every year for technology and AI in particular over the last couple of years. And this year is no different. So we thought we'd take this show and just kind of summarize it from our perspective in terms of what was cool, what was not cool, what are some big trends, some of our favorite gadgets that were shown, and give you a little bit of a snapshot. As usual, we've done a lot of work going deep into all the details, nooks and crannies. So we will have very detailed show notes on by category. So you can just quickly scan down if you're so inclined, and you'll find lots of the best of reviews, details on many of these things, and links. Obviously, there's always Google search and ChatGPT that you can do, but we just thought, you get a little bit of a selection of our picks on some of that, including some of our AI ramblings writings, because we've written about a lot of these topics in detail as well. So to kick it off, what I thought I'd do is kind of highlight some of the top takeaways from our perspective at a high level, then go into some of the specific product announcements that were of note, that caught our eye, etc., and have a discussion around that. So, with no further ado, let me start off with there are 10 items I wanted to just quickly highlight from our takeaways point of view, and then Neil and I will go through it in detail. Number one is just something that I've emphasized in the previous CES show, which is that this year, because of the trade and tariffs and because of the secular spike in memory chips, because of the big buildup trillions of dollars over the next 3 or 4 years for AI data centers, the two or three major companies that provide the memory chips are allocating toward the data centers and away from the consumer side. Why is that important to regular people? Because the gadgets, whether it's PCs, laptops, AI devices, anything you want that has a chip in it, it's going to be more expensive. And that came through at CES, just wide across the board. Affordability concerns are everywhere. And what was interesting was almost every category, every company you talk to, unlike past CESs, where they would tell you what the recommended pricing is and availability when they're shipping, this year, more companies than not said they didn't have availability and pricing information yet, that would come. And that uncertainty, that fuzziness, was a key thing to highlight for this CES relative to anything I've seen. I've been tracking CESs for almost 30 years, 30 years now. We've not seen that before. So there's something fundamentally going on above and beyond the trade and tariffs. So that's number one. That availability and pricing uncertainties abound across CES. Number two, everything was labeled AI, and so that was obvious. That's been going on for the last couple of years. It's now 3 years after OpenAI's ChatGPT moment in November of 22. But what was also clear is that there is AI fatigue setting in, that a lot of the reviewers are just rolling their eyes when the companies talk about their AIs, the robots trying to fold clothes and so on and so forth. And there is a little bit of exhaustion on this, which I think is a good sign. It's people are practical, and the companies have to do what they have to do, especially because their bosses are saying, "Hey, highlight our AI things," and so on. So the soldiers go and do that, but a lot of the stuff is not ready for prime time, and people know it. It's but they won't say it that loud. So AI fatigue is a key number two takeaway. But three, very quickly, AI robots. That's been a huge thing in the last couple of years. It's been building this year. Elon Musk has been jumping up and down along with his Optimus robots that it's going to be a bigger category than cars and everything, billions of robots, etc. Morgan Stanley did a big investor report across 8 parts, 800 pages on robots. Look, we are very excited about robots. I'm an analyst looking at tech for 30 years. I'm excited about it. but robots are 15 to 20 years too early to get excited. So there were a lot of robots at CES, all shapes and sizes. You can see all the videos in our links, etc. There were some very cute ones, especially the little puppies and dogs that look like puppies and dogs and do robot cute things with rolling eyes and wagging tails, all very cute, but novelty items. There were a bunch of robots that, they had demos of, washing dishes or folding clothes, and everyone laughed at them because they were so slow. They fumbled. Now technology moves very quickly, so next year's CES they'll be a lot more efficient and so on. But it's not ready for prime time. So, but the robots were there, still a novelty item, but a lot of money being expended on this. Number 4, Neil and I have been talking a lot about home gadgets, AI gadgets, and one of the core thing is that everything in the home gadget space, from Google, Amazon, with their security cameras, are very siloed. But the good news is, over the last few years, the companies have been creating interoperability standards. One of the big one is Matter. There's a bunch of others, Aliro in locks and so on. And the good news is that this is the one shiny glass half full kind of thing, that these standards are starting to work. That you could see a lot of examples with these home gadgets who are working with each other, lock from one company with shades from another company, etc. In specific, there's a standard called Matter, and that is starting to go mainstream. And that was a good thing to see in this vertical on the gadget side. Number 5, huge amounts of AI devices like smart glasses. It's not just Meta, and it's not just Google and Apple that will have smart glasses. We saw probably 24 plus companies, small and large, announce all kinds of things with smart glasses, with displays in them, etc. So we're going to see a flood of these things. That's the good news this year, as people can figure out how to get the chips and source these things and so on. The bad news is they're still going to be early, and the prices are going to be high. So just watch out for that, for the reasons I talked about earlier. But a lot of wearables, a lot of devices, pins, lapels. OpenAI was not there, but they're rumored to be developing an AI pen as one of their first products with Johnny Ive's help. So a lot of stuff to watch and look at, hopefully later this year on that front. Number 6, TVs are a huge thing at CES. So there were amazing TVs, 100 inches, etc., with micro RGB and a lot of other fancy technologies. The big highlight is when you and I go to our Costco, we're not just going to see 70, 80-inch TVs, but we're going to see 100-inch TVs that will be relatively affordable, especially from companies like TCL and so on. And remember, almost every TV you get at a mainstream store, like a TCL or at a Walmart, etc., they have advertising built in. They're watching you. They're selling your data. And that's how they make this stuff affordable. But the good news is you're going to see great array of better technology TVs. But the big trend to watch in TVs are what are called frame TVs, because most households, including the power in the house are the women who don't want the dang TVs to look like TVs. They want them to look like pictures and art. Samsung had a huge success over the last few years with what are called frame TVs, which are TVs that use panels from several years ago. So they're cheaper to make, but they can display art when they're turned off. And that looks pretty good. And they can sell a subscription on that. And that's been a huge hit for Samsung for the last few years. And this year, we saw half a dozen major companies jump into the space, including Amazon. You're going to see that Amazon announced a bunch of frame TVs. And so these are getting more mainstream and affordable. So frame TVs, if you want TVs that sit in the living room that don't look obnoxious as a big TV, were a relatively big entry into the space. Number 7, and we'll talk about this a little bit more further down the show, but NVIDIA, Jensen Huang had a big keynote. He talked about his next generation Vera Rubin platform. I've got a huge write-up on it. We won't talk a lot about it here, but it's a big leap forward in terms of efficiency and capability on processing AI in the data center. But the other big announcement they had was this NVIDIA hardware and software platform called Alpamayo, which they're working with lots of automakers who can create their own self-driving car platforms using NVIDIA hardware and software. And they showed some very impressive demos with Mercedes in particular on a car that you can buy from Mercedes today that is level 2/level 3 in terms of, and these are the 5 levels where, 5 level is the holy grail, where you don't have to have any steering wheel, but that's several years away. So NVIDIA's self-driving car platform is empowering a lot of car companies, large, medium, small, around the world to create all kinds of interesting self-driving cars. And that was a trend to watch at CES. Number 8 is that on all of these things, as usual, this has been true for decades. Hardware innovation always leads software innovation, and this year was no different. And especially the AI related stuff that we're talking about across all these categories. And that came through very clear that the software for the stuff, the applications that make the stuff really usable, is still behind. And that is a key piece, which leads us into number 9, which is that the AI features, because they depend on the software, were much more brittle. Number one, they were more novelty. Oh, we'll summarize this for you, your email or whatever, and it's kind of a good thing to show off in a demo, but it's not really practical. And number 3, they're all mostly wall gardens. My AI will not work with your AI if I'm Google and you're Apple and that sort of thing. And the last thing is that, Neil and I have been talking about AI browsers as being one of the key ways to see for in AI innovation in software. And we're going to see more traction on that stuff this year than in what I call the physical AI gadgets, which is what we see at CES. And so coming away from this CES, we're a little bit more convinced that browsers, if you're looking for AI innovation this year, we'll continue to talk about that this year. We're going to see more action on that front than on the hardware side. So those will be our 10 high-level takeaways on all of this stuff before we get into our favorite items and so on. Neil, I went through a long laundry list. What do you think? Because we've talked a lot about this.
The one I wanted to touch on was the whole AI fatigue thing. I think it's really real, and I kind of got caught up in it too. I was looking at a review, I believe it was a new Samsung TV, and they introduced it, explaining that the World Cup is coming to the U.S. this year, and to prepare for that, Samsung had built what they're calling, I think it was called soccer mode or something into one of their TVs, and I got a bit
That's right.
excited because there's a lot of potential there. They could show stats on the screen or use generative features to enhance some stuff. And then when they revealed what the feature was, I immediately got disappointed. Was they said all soccer mode is they use AI to change the brightness of the grass, and then they use AI to enhance the audio of the TV, which essentially is two things you can do on any non-AI TV right now: is change the contrast and increase the volume, or change the volume mode to be a studio audio or a theater audio. So I think that really encapsulates a lot of what kind of went on this year, and this trend that we've been seeing overall is, for whatever reason, shareholder value, to get media attention, we're kind of slapping AI on anything now and just changing things that would have just been baseline features in the past. So yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to chime in on, just as an anecdotal thing I saw at CES this year. That was
I'm so glad you brought up the soccer thing, because I looked at that as well, and it just makes the grass greener, which was it's obviously one of those things where the boss is saying, come up with a good thing to talk about, and the minion said, okay, we're going to create a soccer feature. It was one of those things we're seeing across the industry, across companies. I feel sorry for the worker bees who have to kind of deliver on this, but they did their best. And so that was a
yeah,
case in point.
exactly.
So anyway, so these are the high level things, just there's a lot in this, but we wanted to convey that at a high level. But at the same time, Neil and I, we're nerds. We love the gadgets. We love the product design. So there was a lot of cool stuff to look at. In our show notes, there's a bunch of these. We have our the best of reviews by various people, so you can look at tons of detail. But the one I like in particular is one by The Verge, where every one of their senior departments does their favorite across categories, and there's a 4 or 5 minute video that highlights that, and that's in the notes. You can just click on it. But what I thought we'd kick off is just talk about 3 or 4 products that caught our attention, right? And go through some of that. Number one for me, and I think you agreed, Neil, but we can talk about, is Lego. We've all grown up with Lego, regardless of generation. They've introduced something called smart bricks, which have this lot of technology and small little bricks that basically create a lot of multimedia functionality using Bluetooth and other technologies in any construction you make around this stuff. And there's a lot of excitement around this, with several sets that are going to be available to order today. So these are not fuzzy things, etc. A little bit more expensive because more electronics and chips and stuff in them. But one of the reviewers, I found it was interesting. They said, I particularly like these Lego bricks, smart bricks, because they have no AI. and that I thought was hilarious. So,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
so Lego smart bricks, I think. Oh, Neil, you're a Lego master from way. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I'm happy about the whole non AI thing. I think it's in a world of where everything is AI. It's nice to have something non AI that's just is a good product. In the end of the day, I think it's really cool. There is a whole concern about obviously the price tag that's being set and how accessible this is. But I will counter that with saying the fact that these things are available right away is a breath of fresh air when it comes to CES, because a lot of times with CES, the thing you see is these really cool things are shown off. It's like those concept cars, it's this is how the future can look, but it's never how the future will look because a lot of the things are not real yet. So the fact that this was made, it's ready to go, even though it is a steeper price point, I think it's a step in the right
I think the
direction, I think.
availability is a key point that you hit on it, and it hits on our second of the three products is the company called Clicks, which is made by former people who did the BlackBerry screens. Those of you who are my age remember them BlackBerry. Neil never has used BlackBerries. BlackBerries, for those of you who are younger, this is what we did before smartphones. We wanted to send messages and stuff. And the guys who designed that have created this new company called Clicks, along with a major tech review person, Michael Fisher, and it's made a lot of buzz because they've got a product called the Communicator, which is essentially a BlackBerry with an Android 15 smartphone. It's actually a very cool device, $500. But to your point, Neil, not available. There's no timing. It's sometime middle of the year. But if you pre-order one now for $400 instead of $500, you get $100 off, and they get your money and they can continue to build it, and they can actually, and here too, the software in the demos that they showed doesn't work because the software is behind the hardware, and they've got to figure it out. But the Communicator, because of this retro focus, everyone loves things going back to, your generation is totally nuts about digital cameras, before they were all embedded into our smartphones. All the retro cameras from the Nikons and the Ricos, etc., are Sony's are trading at high prices on eBay. Vinyl is back, retro is big, and the Communicator is a case in point. So that was number two because a lot of the tech reviewers are friends with the guy who co-founded this company, who's a tech reviewer, and so they corralled around this product, and it got a lot of attention. And number three is less a product, but more something we've touched on. And there's a huge trend around gaming, especially in consoles and handhelds, moving away from Windows, which has been the primary operating system, toward Linux-based systems like Steam OS and Bazide and a bunch of other things. And that is a trend that we saw in a lot of gaming devices and PCs this year. So that I wanted to highlight as a number three media favorite of CES 2025. There's lots more, but I thought I'd highlight those three, and there's articles and stuff you guys can look at to understand this stuff better if you so are so inclined.
Yeah.
And
Um,
that
and
go ahead, Neil.
and
Do you
on
have
that,
thoughts on you?
yeah, on the whole clicks thing, I do want to speak on that for a second because it is, as you said, this push towards retro, this push towards also the idea of a dumb phone. The clicks, obviously, due to the hardware restraints, and also the software restraints, consequentially, will not have the features of an iPhone out of the box. And I think that's something that's being welcomed by a lot of people because we are trying to move away. I think as a generation, at least I can hopefully speak a bit towards my generation. Less screen time, less brain rot, and I think that comes in the form of something a bit more mechanical that has a bit more routine and ritual to it for what it's been built for. So yeah, I just wanted to underline that it is, this increasing trend. And these things happen all the time. There's always ebbs and flows, whether it's with hardware and software. Right now people are going back. I'm sure in a couple of years it'll move back the other way towards fully digital experiences. But right now this is just the cycle that we're in.
The one thing I'll say about the Communicator, and yours truly got very close to ordering one several times, and I haven't done it. One of the reasons, and I just want to point it out for regular people, if you're using iPhones, then the Communicator is not going to add a lot of value to you, especially because most of us on the iPhone side, we live in Messages. And Messages will not integrate because this is an Android device. There is Google Messages, but that's not the same. So yes, you will on this Communicator, you'll get your email, you'll get your Slack, you'll get your WhatsApp and Telegram and all this other stuff, but it's not interoperable across messages again because of the silo nature of the thing. So why don't we move on to the next section, Neil? our favorite personal favorites of gadgets that we saw that we may want to, look at a
Yeah.
little closer. You had a good one to kick us off here.
Yeah, mine's a bit different from what I would have expected mine to be if you'd asked me before the show. But a couple of years ago we moved into our new house and I kind of helped smart homify everything. We got a bunch of, things in different areas, cameras, doorbells, the whole, starter pack. And we've chosen to go with a lot of what Google offers. But in the years since, there's been a lot of developments, especially with what Apple's done in terms of HomeKit and Matter support, which is, this whole protocol that's being shared across all the manufacturers and product makers to help unify all the smart home experiences. And the one that I saw that was kind of interesting was by this company called Aquara. It's the Smart Lock U400. Why is it important? Smart locks have existed for a while in this space, but they've mostly been in areas such as a touchpad that you could enter in a password or even a fingerprint reader. But this is one of the first ones that utilizes ultra wideband technology. And what is that? That's essentially an antenna within it that will sense when you're close to it with something like an iPhone or an Apple Watch, and it'll unlock the device because it knows it's you. So with similar technology to what Apple uses in things like the AirPods to be able to connect wirelessly, this smart lock does the same. It has fail safes, of course. It has a keypad, it has a fingerprint reader, and also has a key if you're boring and you want to use the old traditional ways. But I thought it was interesting because at least I hadn't seen something like this where you can just walk up to the device and it'll recognize that it's you. Similar to how a lot of the new cars that Apple has decided to partner up with to do the same. But this is something that's a bit more attainable than $100,000 car.
No, no,
And it's
exactly.
really
And
cool tech.
there are some great demos of this thing, and I love that just ease of use across platforms of this lock, and it shows how this stuff is getting more mature, especially with the interoperability across the standards. And Aliro is a very key standard there, so I totally agree. In terms of my favorite gadgets, the next one I will talk about is actually from the same company we just talked about, Clicks. They have one product that's about $79. And this is the one that I do think they innovated around, which is that they offer this click thing, but they convert it into a MagSafe device that goes on the back of either your iPhone or your Android, which now has MagSafe increasingly, if you have a Google phone or a case that has a MagSafe. And it just literally folds out and you have a little keyboard, so your whole screen is free. But what's most interesting about it is that you can use it as a miniature keyboard now for your TV. So when you have to type stuff rather than pick letters, it becomes a teeny miniature keyboard you can use for your TVs and so on for codes, and you can use it as a second Bluetooth keyboard for things like your iPad, for other devices where you're on the go at a coffee shop and you want to quickly type something short, but you don't want to use the screen. So that innovation, I think, is a key one. And it's actually the only product from Clicks that I would recommend right now if you're not a total gadget geek, because they have a promotion in it'll ship, I think, in a month or so. Right now, there's a $79 price, but otherwise it goes back to 109. But that I thought was, and it has a power bank. So it goes on the back of your phone and it gives it, an hour or two extra battery life. So that's another feature of the Clicks keyboard. So that was one of my favorite things, and I did pre-order that one as an example. And then my other favorite gadget, I've talked about the handheld gadget for gaming. Lenovo, that makes the biggest handheld gaming thing, 8.8-inch screen, is going to. They have a version that offers Windows on their thing, which I have. Terrible. Windows it doesn't work well on a handheld. Lenovo on this Go platform is adding Steam OS, and this will be available again. Like you said, these things are not available because of all the tariff issues and so on. They'll be available in June, so middle of the year. It'll be 12, 13, $1,400, so expensive. But that caught my eye because it's a bigger screen Steam OS device, and if you're into gaming, Steam OS is a library where people like me have hundreds of games on there, and it allows us to play our software any way we want on a bigger screen. So the Lenovo device caught my eye particularly. And then in terms of a couple other things I'll just highlight from my end is I'm not in the market yet for a full self-driving car, but if I were, if any of you are, the Mercedes CLA that Jensen talked about in their keynote is probably the most interesting self-driving platform, even ahead of the Tesla full self-driving. Tesla obviously gets a lot of reviews and there's a huge following around Tesla, but recognize Tesla only uses cameras as sensors. Elon decided for a bunch of years ago that he didn't want to do the radar, LiDAR stuff because it was very expensive for 5, 6 years ago. That's gotten a lot cheaper. It's all now been miniaturized into chips. So most of the industry is now adding both cameras and the LiDAR sensors. And the Mercedes CLA, along with NVIDIA's two hardware platforms, Orin today and Thor tomorrow, support systems with a lot of these sensors. And so for the same price of the car that you're getting from anything from Tesla or anybody else, the Mercedes system is a CLA you can get today with the NVIDIA system, and that'll be getting a lot better. If I had a little bit more time on this, I would wait for the Thor processors, which are the next generation NVIDIA processors versus the Orin one today. But you'd probably have to wait 6 to 12 months for those cars. But I thought, the self-driving stuff, there are some videos we'll put up on the driving experience in San Francisco and how cool it is, etc. And you can get a sense of how well these things work or not. And then the last thing I'll just say is one of my favorite gadgets that I'm waiting for. It's again, the timing is delayed because of all the macro issues, but it'll probably be in the first quarter, is Samsung. And they announced their trifold phone in Korea. It sold out worldwide, but it's coming to the US. It'll be expensive, probably $2,500 or more. But that caught my eye because it folds out with 3 screens to a 10-inch, basically a tablet, iPad type of size. Again, less AI, more just, on the go computing, but it was a cool gadget. But those would be my favorites in this whole thing. And again, there was a bunch more things, and we didn't have a chance to kind of go through all that, but there's a lot of detail for you guys if you want. Neil, do you have any thoughts on any of this before we close out the
No,
show?
that's really it. It's I think as you put very well, there's so much stuff that comes out of this show that it's hard to cover everything. But I think these were the highlights. We encourage everyone to go look at all the reviews and all the podcasts that we're gonna have linked below to see additional stuff. But yeah, I think it was a pretty good
And
CES
again,
overall.
no, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to step over you. Thank you again for joining us. And if you have comments, feedback, thoughts on any of this, always appreciated. As usual, likes and subscribes, always appreciated. Thank you again for joining us here as we kick off 2026. And we look forward to seeing you on episode 38. And stay tuned.
Thank you.